Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time we're going all the way back to the beginning of Christianity.
Back to the book of Acts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Chapter 18.
One of my favorite chapters.
Yeah, it's Paul in Corinth.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. I mean, it's really, Corinth becomes this pivotal point
absolutely.
in early Christianity.
Yeah.
As it moves out, from a small Jewish sect into this global faith.
Such a fascinating time in the development of the faith.
And I think what's so interesting about it is there's just so many details that are intriguing. So we have tent-making apostles.
Right.
We have Roman emperors. We even have like a courtroom scene.
We do.
So a lot to unpack here.
A lot of interesting things happening in this chapter for sure.
So let's start, I guess, at the beginning. Paul arrives in Corinth,
Okay.
and he's come from Athens.
Right.
And you might expect him to jump right into preaching.
Right.
But he does something a little different first. He meets this couple.
A Jewish couple.
Yeah, Aquila and Priscilla.
Right.
And they have a pretty amazing story themselves.
They do. They do. I mean, their story is fascinating because they are essentially refugees.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Emperor Claudius had expelled all the Jews from Rome,
Wow.
and so they had to flee. Imagine having to just leave everything,
Yeah.
and go to a new city and start over.
Yeah, it's kind of unimaginable. And they ended up in Corinth.
Yeah. And that's where they meet Paul.
Okay. And so Paul, being a tent maker by trade, decides to join them in their business.
Right. That's right. And this is it's a human detail.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that, these early Christians weren't just sort of, spiritual leaders going around preaching,
Yeah.
but they were real people with
Yeah.
practical skills
Right.
and everyday concerns. And, Paul could have tried to find, wealthy patrons
Right.
to support his ministry,
Mm-hmm.
but instead he chose to work alongside Aquila and Priscilla.
Right. And I wonder, stitching tents all day long gives you a lot of time
A lot of time to talk.
and connect. And
Yeah.
I imagine their faith.
Absolutely.
Step up.
I mean, I imagine that,
Mm.
those long hours spent working together
Yeah.
probably gave them a chance to bond
Yeah.
and to, share stories, discuss their faith,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even, brainstorm how Paul might present his message to the Corinthians.
Right. So while he's working, though, he doesn't neglect his mission. And he starts engaging in these discussions at the synagogue every Sabbath.
Right. And that makes sense because remember at this point, Christianity was still very much intertwined with Judaism.
Okay.
So he's going to the synagogue,
Yeah.
which was the center of Jewish life,
Mm-hmm.
and he's trying to persuade both Jews and Greeks
Right.
who are attending
Yeah.
that Jesus is the long-awaited Messiah.
So he's trying to bridge these
Yeah.
two worlds.
He is. He's really trying to find a way to present
Yeah.
this new understanding of the scriptures
Yeah.
that incorporates Jesus
Right.
into that existing Jewish framework.
Okay. And then things get even more interesting because Silas and Timothy arrive from Macedonia.
Right. That's right. And their arrival seems to kind of energize Paul.
Yeah.
I mean, the book of Acts even says he was compelled by the Spirit
Mm-hmm.
to, testify even more boldly about Jesus.
So he's feeling pretty good.
It seems like it.
But not everyone is thrilled about his message.
Right.
We hear about, opposition, even blasphemy,
Right.
coming particularly from some members of the Jewish community.
Right. And it comes to a head.
Yeah.
And this is where you see Paul, he just takes a stand.
Okay.
He performs this very symbolic act
Mhm.
of shaking out his garments.
Okay.
It's like
What does that mean?
it's like he's saying, look, I've done my best.
Okay.
I've tried to reason with you,
Okay.
but now I must turn to those who are open.
Okay. So she's drawing a line in the sand.
He's drawing a line in the sand and he's going to move on.
So does that mean that he gives up on the Jewish community entirely?
No, not exactly. I mean,
Okay.
he finds a new base of operations
Mm.
right next door to the synagogue
Okay.
in the house of a man named Justus,
Okay.
who worshiped God,
Okay. So
It's all-
he's not totally breaking away
Right.
from Judaism.
Oh, he's creating space.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it seems like this message really resonates with some people.
It does. And in fact, we learned about Crispus,
Yeah.
the ruler of the synagogue,
Oh, wow.
who converts to Christianity
Oh, wow.
along with his entire household.
Wow, that's huge.
And then many other Corinthians start to believe
Wow.
and they get baptized.
Wow.
So
Corinth is becoming quite the...
it's becoming a real center of Christian activity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And Paul is encouraged. In fact, he receives a vision from the Lord,
Okay.
assuring him of protection
Mm-hmm.
and saying that there are many people in this city
Okay.
who are ready to believe.
So that must be really encouraging.
Oh, absolutely. Especially after facing all that opposition.
Yeah.
It gave him the confidence to stay in Corinth
Okay.
for a year and a half,
Wow.
to really dedicate himself to teaching.
And spreading the word.
To spreading the word.
But things weren't always smooth sailing.
No,
He runs into some conflict.
And this time it involves the Roman authorities.
Oh, uh-oh. What happened?
Well, he's brought before Gallio,
Okay.
who was the Roman proconsul of Achaia.
So not like an emperor, but like a...
No, more like a regional governor.
Okay.
Yeah, overseeing that province.
Got it.
And the Jews accuse Paul of promoting unlawful worship.
So they're saying that he's...
Yeah, they're saying his teachings are basically a threat to Roman order.
So the Jews are turning to the Romans to silence Paul.
It's a very complicated
Oh,
situation.
but he's Jewish.
I know. But they see his interpretation of the scriptures as a challenge to their authority.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what does Gallio do? Does he side with the Jewish leaders?
Well, his response is really kind of surprising.
Okay.
He basically says, look, if this is some internal Jewish dispute
Okay.
about your laws and your scriptures,
Okay.
I'm not getting involved.
Wow.
Sort it out amongst yourselves.
What a dismissive reaction.
Yeah, but it's incredibly significant.
Okay.
Because it reveals the Roman Empire's initial indifference toward early Christianity.
Okay.
They basically, as long as it wasn't disrupting public order,
Yeah.
they didn't really care.
Okay. So in a way, this is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, Gallio's disinterest actually allowed Christianity to grow
Yeah.
without much interference.
Interesting. But then there's this strange twist.
Right.
After Gallio dismisses the case, the Greeks beat Sosthenes,
I know.
who is the new ruler of the synagogue.
Yeah, we don't know exactly why.
What?
We can only speculate.
That's so weird.
It really is. Maybe they were sympathetic to Paul.
Okay.
Or maybe they were just annoyed that this whole trial had disrupted their day.
Oh.
Right. But it just shows how much tension there was in Corinth
Yeah.
between these different groups.
So Paul, he escapes punishment.
He does.
Things are heating up. What does he do next?
Well, he stays for a while,
Okay.
but eventually he decides to move on.
Okay.
He sets sail for Syria,
Okay.
taking Aquila and Priscilla with him.
Okay.
And there's this little detail.
Yeah.
He gets a haircut.
A haircut. Why is that worth mentioning?
Well, it signifies that he completed a vow.
Oh.
So, it's these little details that remind us that,
Yeah.
these figures were real people
Right.
with, personal practices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it wasn't all just,
Right.
spreading the gospel. He was
Something did.
Exactly.
That's right.
So he leaves Corinth, but his travels aren't over.
No, he goes to Ephesus,
Okay.
then Jerusalem,
Okay.
back to Antioch. This guy's constantly on the move.
I know it's exhausting just reading about it.
It is. But it shows how dedicated he was
Yep.
to spreading this message.
Yeah. And that's actually a good point to bring up our next character,
Okay.
Apollos.
Right.
So we have this new character,
A new character enters the scene.
Apollos, who's this learned Jew from Alexandria.
Yeah, a very eloquent man,
Yeah.
very knowledgeable about the scriptures.
Okay, so sounds like he has a lot to offer.
He does. He does. But
Yeah.
there's a key piece missing.
He's missing something, a key piece. What is it?
He only knows the baptism of John the Baptist.
So he knows about, repentance and
Right, preparing the way.
preparing the way for the Messiah.
Right. But he hasn't quite connected the dots
Yeah.
to Jesus being that Messiah.
Okay, so he's missing like a big,
He's missing a huge piece of the puzzle.
yeah,
Yeah, he's missing the whole idea of Jesus' death and resurrection
right,
and what that means for salvation.
right. Okay, so he's got a lot of zeal, a lot of passion, but
Yeah.
he's missing
A little bit misguided.
the main point.
Yeah.
But luckily,
Luckily for him, he runs into
Mhm.
Aquila and Priscilla,
oh wow.
who are now in Ephesus.
Oh, so they've moved on.
They've moved on.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's amazing how their paths keep
Right, oh.
crossing with these major figures.
Right. They're at the center of everything.
I know.
Yeah.
So they meet Apollos and they realize, okay,
Yeah.
this guy's got a lot of passion, but
Yeah. He needs a little guidance.
he needs a little
Yeah.
direction. So what do?
They take him aside
Okay.
and explain to him the full scope of the way of God,
Okay.
helping him understand
Yeah.
the significance of Jesus' sacrifice.
It's amazing to think, like, what if he hadn't met them?
I know.
He would have just gone on
Right.
preaching this
A very incomplete message.
incomplete message.
Yeah.
So really, it's all about not just passion and knowledge,
Right.
but also having the right.
Having a solid understanding of your
Did.
beliefs.
Okay. So now Apollos has this more complete picture. What does he do?
He travels to Achaia,
Okay.
carrying a letter of recommendation from the disciples in Ephesus.
It's like a first century LinkedIn recommendation.
Exactly.
I love it.
It shows this growing network of early Christian communities.
Yeah.
They're supporting each other.
Yeah.
They're vouching for each other.
Yeah.
A really fascinating thing to see.
And so he goes to Corinth
He does.
with this letter.
Yep.
Same place that Paul...
I know, right back where it all started.
I know.
It's like he's picking up the torch in
Yeah.
a way.
So he gets there, they're like, oh, yeah.
They welcome him with open arms.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what does he do there?
Well, he continues to preach and teach.
Okay.
And the book of Acts tells us that he vigorously refuted
Okay.
those who opposed Christianity.
Okay, so he's engaging in these, like, intellectual debates.
Yeah, he's not shying away from the tough questions.
So wasn't just, like, an emotional appeal? It was very much like
It was a meeting of the minds.
Wow.
They believed that reason and argumentation
Okay.
could lead people to the truth.
So we've got Paul planting these seeds.
Yes.
We've got Aquila and Priscilla.
Nurturing the seed.
Nurturing, and then Apollos comes in and is like
Watering them.
watering them.
Making them grow.
It's beautiful.
It really is a beautiful picture of collaboration.
Yeah, and it takes, I mean, obviously Paul's this amazing figure,
Of course.
but it takes a village to build this.
Absolutely. And this chapter really highlights how
Yeah.
all these different people
Yeah.
contributed to that.
Yeah, and I think just thinking about Paul's journey, it's so inspiring, right?
Absolutely.
Like he faces so much opposition and rejection, and yet he just keeps going.
Never gives up.
He's not afraid to like get his hands dirty.
He's a tent maker.
He's making tents.
He's in the courtroom.
He's in the courtroom.
He's doing it all.
He's doing it all.
Yeah.
And never loses sight of the importance of community.
Community and mentorship.
It's amazing.
Essential for any movement that wants to last.
So we've got these great figures. We've got Paul, we've got Apollos.
Aquila and Priscilla.
All working together.
All working together.
Mhm.
And it really gives you a glimpse into what it was like back then.
The messy reality of building this new faith.
Yeah, and how history is not just dates and battles,
Right.
but it's these personal stories.
It's people's lives intersecting.
And it makes you think, what are we doing today that might have these ripple effects?
What seemingly small actions
Yeah.
are shaping the future in ways we can't even imagine?
Wow, that's a great question.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about how these small things can add up, you know?
It really does.
So we've been on this journey through Acts chapter 18.
Yeah. A fascinating chapter.
So much going on.
So much happening. Paul's ministry in Corinth.
Yeah.
It really shows you how these early Christians came together.
Yeah, they really work together.
And it's not just about like the big names.
Right.
It's about
all the people
all the people involved.
who contributed.
Yeah. And I think, you know, as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what are some of the things that we can take away
From
this story?
I think for me, one of the things that stands out
Yeah.
is just Paul's commitment
His commitment to his mission.
to the mission.
Yeah. He faced so much.
Oh, yeah. I mean, rejection, opposition, threats.
Yeah. And he just keeps going.
It just keeps going.
Amazing.
He never gives up.
And his message resonated with so many different people.
Right. You've got Jews, Gentiles,
backgrounds.
different social classes.
It's incredible.
It really is.
There's something universal.
Yeah, there's something about that message of hope that just transcended those cultural boundaries.
And we can't forget about the community.
Oh, the community is so important.
That support network.
Yeah, I mean, Aquila and Priscilla
Right there from the beginning.
opening their homes,
Sharing their workshop.
working alongside
It's
him.
incredible.
And then they mentor Apollos.
Oh, yeah. That's a powerful example of mentorship.
Yeah. I mean, what if they hadn't done that?
Right. What would have happened to Apollos?
Would he have gone on to do the things that he did?
Who knows?
Who knows?
But it just shows you how those small acts of guidance can have such a ripple effect.
And then you have the Roman Empire.
Oh, yeah. That adds a whole other layer.
I mean, Gallio just dismissing the case.
Right. He didn't want to get involved.
He was like, I don't have time for this.
It's a Jewish matter,
Yeah.
not a Roman one.
And yet that indifference, really.
Right. It created space for Christianity to grow.
Yeah.
At least for a time.
It's so interesting to see how these things play out.
It's like a domino effect.
Yeah.
One thing leads to another.
And it reminds us that even the biggest movements,
Right. Start small. Yeah. With just a handful of people.
committed individuals.
To really believe in something.
Yeah.
It's inspiring.
It is inspiring.
So as we finish up here,
Yeah.
let's think about what we're doing today.
Right. What small acts of courage
Yeah, kindness collaboration.
are we engaging in?
That might shape the future.
Yeah, maybe we're all part of a bigger story
Wow,
than we realize.
that's a great point.
Man,
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into early Christian history.
it's been a pleasure.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep connecting the dots.